Today we're going to discuss some really important current events. I'm going to start out with North Korea and Iran, and then we're going to work into some of the more current developments with regards to what I'm calling the Trump counterattack. Specifically, we'll talk about General Flynn and what I think is going on in General Flynn's case, and we'll talk about the prospects for indictments that are developing in other uh, aspects that are going to affect the midterm elections. Uh, I'm sensing this is at a current critical point, and that I see a change, almost a sea change, in how President Trump is operating. President Trump has moved into a much more serious kind of high gear now in how he's dealing with events and making decisions. Um, let's first deal with North Korea. It's amazing to me, and it should be around the world, that we're going to have, I think, the prospect of peace in North Korea and South Korea without a war. And I pointed out repeatedly that I think Kim Jong-un's change of attitude goes back to the nuclear weapon he had under development that was detonated in this underground facility. And I'm quite confident it was a detonation that was triggered by U.S. military action and was not accidental. Then, late last week, we got word that underground facility had collapsed, the whole nuclear underground facility in North Korea, and that had killed about 100 people. British Columbia, Canada, good to have you join us too. I see here Tara Wood. Thank you very much for joining, and thank you for your prayers and your good wishes. What we're seeing, and I think with the North Koreans, is that they decided essentially that if they were going to make weapons that they couldn't use, that they were going to be capable of being detonated by the United States, very similar to what happened in Libya with Gaddafi when President Reagan had an airstrike on Gaddafi that actually sent some missiles into Gaddafi's living quarters and killed at least one of his children. Belgium, thank you. That's very good. Good to see you from Belgium. Thank you. Good to have people from all over the world joining us. And Maestro Voci, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Um, I really do want to thank all the supporters out there for your encouragement. I'm getting a lot of encouragement and good words, and the people coming on board and saying hello. It's always appreciated. The support here is well received and well appreciated. Um, with regards to North Korea, the key thing is, I think, whether President Trump gets a Nobel Peace Prize or not, I think is insignificant to President Trump. What he's doing is kind of a mission, and the mission is to bring peace to the world and deal with this new world order, to defeat these forces of evil, including exposing the pedophilia, exposing the Satanism. All of this is really important to Donald Trump to do. B. Scott, thank you very much. So North Korea, if we can have peace, I think we're going to get it. I think the meeting may be held in the DMZ, the demilitarized zone. That's, I think, a great way we are going to be able to... Hold on a second. I have to ask a question here. Okay, there. We're going to have a meeting, I think, between President Trump and Kim Jong-un in the demilitarized zone, which would be remarkable. I think it's going to be historic. I think it's going to be even more important than when, all of the Nixon going to China, and with all of the reaching across the world that meant, opening up of, I think, China to hopefully continued peace. But North Korea will be groundbreaking and game-changing, because we still do not have an end to the North Korean-South Korean War from the 1950s. This will mark an actual end to that war, and then a peace period in which North Korea will agree to give up nuclear weapons without, again, military action. Now, today we had a very dramatic speech from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu It was televised worldwide, and I'm sure many of you watched it. It was on Fox News. It was on, I'm sure, many broadcasts. And Netanyahu did a remarkable thing. He shared intelligence with the world from Israel, including some that came from a safe house that was captured intelligence, that disclosed secret Iranian nuclear arms facilities that were continuing in operation, including facilities that were designed basically to create the warhead. Now that's the key issue, is that the warhead is the last kind of stage you have to design in a nuclear weapon. It has to be miniaturized. All the components of a nuclear weapon have to be miniaturized to fit into a warhead, an ICBM, and that has to be able to re-enter the atmosphere without burning up. These are very complicated engineering problems, and I'm sure that Iran is capable of solving them and on the track of solving them. Now, what Netanyahu's presentation made was that what Netanyahu's presentation made today was an address to the world with detail. I mean, this facility that was underground, really in the mountains of Tehran. And I attended a briefing maybe 3 years ago from a group called the NCRI, which is a resistance group in Iran, in Washington, D.C., and they were the first, I think, to disclose this facility. The NCRI has had really the best intelligence on the Iran's nuclear program and their cheating from almost the beginning, and has been extremely reliable. It was the entire discussion of what we heard today, for those who have followed Iran, who have been reading the UN's atomic energy reports on the agreement that was signed with Iran. There was not entirely much new. It was just a lot of confirmation that Iran has been continuing to cheat, continuing to lie, and using the money that was provided in this massive agreement by John Kerry, Barack Obama, and Hillary Clinton, which I thought from the beginning was a concession to Iran to fund terrorism and to fund the terrorists in Syria, building a Shiite, and Iran is Shiite versus the Sunnis, beginning of that ultimate war between the two, and certainly moving into what is NCI the acronym for? It's an acronym that comes out of the Iranian, but it basically identifies a resistance group, one of the major resistance groups in Iran. Now, the entire use of this money for funding terrorism and setting up bases, which Iran was doing in Syria, and these bases could also have been ultimately nuclear bases, either nuclear weapons or nuclear development sites, off-site from Iran, certainly staging bases, which would have been closer to Tel Aviv. And even when I wrote Atomic Iran, what I warned was that one nuclear weapon, even of Hiroshima size, on Tel Aviv, detonated over Tel Aviv, would destroy the modern Jewish state as we know it. Now, if we go back to these two situations in North Korea and Iran, I want to draw some similarities and dissimilarities. In Iran, we knew the agreement was one-sided. We knew that the agreement was such that Iran was not really required to do the inspections that a normal agreement would have allowed. Iran could refuse to do inspections or had to be notified in advance of inspections so things could be tidied up. Iran ultimately, after about 7 years, would have been authorized to go ahead and make nuclear weapons. It was not a disarmament agreement. With these millions and billions of dollars we sent to Iran, and I think it's continuing in the agreement, there's continuing flow of money, you find that Iran was able to fund its aggressive position into Syria, continue funding Hezbollah in Lebanon, and Hamas in Gaza. Iran's still the major exporter of terrorism. Now, North Korea the only agreements we had with North Korea go back to the Jimmy Carter uh, mission under Bill Clinton's presidency, which was an attempt to get this agreed upon framework in which we gave nuclear fuel to North Korea to see what they would do with it. And of course, they made nuclear weapons on it. But the situation between North Korea and South Korea is relatively simple in terms of the division and the forces involved. North Korea has been communist. South Korea was aligned with the United States going back to the end of World War II, has attempted to be a democracy. South Korea has been flourishing economically. North Korea has been a client state of communist China and has been struggling economically. In Iran, Iran has largely made the people of Iran suffer horrendously. You know, I've marched with the Iranians. After I wrote Atomic Iran, we had a march from the Liberty Bell to Washington, D.C. for freedom in Iran. And most of the people on that march were Muslims from Iran. They wanted freedom in their own country. These were peaceful people. And I learned about the great suffering of the people in Iran, the families that had to sell children into sex slavery in order to eat. The real conflict, and I want to take a second to explain it, and the Sunni Shiite difference, is that the Shiites, and Ursula Christie, thank you very much. Lupi Lala, thank you very much. The situation in Sunni Shiite, and Iran is the Shiites. The Shiites believe, and this is going to seem remarkable to the people hearing it for the first time, that the leadership of Islam should be of a descendant of the Prophet, whereas the Sunnis believe in secular control of Islam. So, for instance, Turkey for years had the Ottoman Empire, which was a caliphate, an Islamic empire, but it was secular rule. In Iran, they, as Shiites, have rejected secular rule, so they're waiting for the return of a missing member of the Prophet's family line, which was what they call the Mahdi. This was as a young boy, in something like 300 and something AD, went down a well and disappeared. And they say that the Mahdi is going to return out of the well. They have a specific location in Iran for the well that the Mahdi went down. And when the Mahdi returns, there's going to be an apocalypse, and that apocalypse will create the situation for the Shiites to conquer the Sunnis and to be the remaining true universal religion of the world. Now, as remarkable as that seems, it's exactly what's dividing the two. And you can look at the Middle East in terms of how that division occurs. What we see right now today in the mission of Pompeo is basically to recruit and continue to recruit Jordan into an alliance now with Saudi Arabia and Egypt, all of which are Sunni, all of which have rejected the Muslim Brotherhood. And now it looks like Saudi Arabia in this recent revolution is going to reject Wahhabism, which is the extremist form of Sunni Islam in Saudi Arabia. Now, even if Israel were to be wiped off the map, even if the United States were to be ceasing to exist, the Shiites and the Sunnis would fight each other in the ultimate war, because the two of them are deadlocked against each other in this conflict over who's the true ruler of Islam. The conflict in North Korea is not nearly as complex, because the North Koreans and the South Koreans share a common culture, and that culture is distinctly Korean, has a long history with Japan and with China, and the Korean peninsula has been fought over for centuries. But the Korean people, I think, unified, could very quickly have a common culture throughout Korea, and the prosperity that is in South Korea could extend to North Korea if North Korea would relax its iron grip on the people which this Kim Jong-un dynasty, father and son, have gone through to try to put all the money into the military and create a totalitarian communist society. Yes, I want to make clear that the bad guy in Saudi Arabia is really the Wahhabism in the Sunnis, which is in a sense the Shiite version of radicalism. I think the Shiites, in terms of their grip on the population, in terms of their radicalism, Ayatollah Khomeini was, in 1979, was a Shiite. Now, the Shiites are the more truly radical because they're not willing to accept even this other branch of Islam because they believe centuries ago that the Prophet's descendants were killed, and they blame the other Sunnis for having killed the Prophet's descendants. And they're still fighting that battle. They're fighting it rapidly. We correctly identify Iran as the major exporter of terrorism in the world. Since I wrote Atomic Iran, I was trying to alert everyone that we were going to face an atomic war with Iran if we didn't restrain their ability to develop nuclear weapons. What I wrote in Atomic Iran 2005 was that terrorists don't stockpile weapons, they use them. And the moment Iran has the ability to make its own nuclear weapons and to reproduce those nuclear weapons, not just use them one and be done, but to have others available in the arsenal, Iran will engage in a nuclear war. I'm confident of it. I've been from the beginning. And we see the constant cheating of these UN agreements. We see the constant cheating of the agreements that were signed by Obama, Hillary, and Kerry, who I think were basically wink knew that Iran was going to develop nuclear weapons surreptitiously under that agreement, just as they knew North Korea would. And as we've seen, I think the New World Order, the Hillary Clinton crowd, kind of welcomed a nuclear war, as remarkable as that seems. And we're goading Russia, pushing, allowing funding. And I think the CIA has been behind the development of nuclear weapons in both Iran and North Korea. We also have information that under this Uranium One deal, where Russia gained control of 20% of the United States uranium, and, by the way, a lockhold on Kazakhstan's uranium, because Uranium One, that is a company out of Canada, with Bill Clinton's assistance, went and grabbed the initial uranium rights in Kazakhstan, which led Russia to want to buy Uranium One to get those rights back. Kazakhstan's proximity, former part of the Soviet Union, Russia believed it had the first rights on that uranium. Kazakhstan is the biggest producer of uranium in the world by far. They may produce 60 or 70% of the world's uranium at any given time. We're not that large a producer of uranium, but this gave Russia control, this deal which the Clinton Foundation sold, Uranium One deal, control of 20% of U.S. uranium to Russia. I don't want to get off track on the Clinton scandal. I may come back to that, involved in that transaction. And Robert Mueller's involved in that transaction, which I think he was complicit, very possibly paid off. The point I want to make is that a lot of the uranium that was processed we were told was not going to leave the United States, but we've since learned that it has left the United States and did get to North Korea, and I believe also to Iran. That uranium was sold, and the money sent by Obama in these big cargo planes, we don't still have an accounting of how many cargo planes went, where they landed. That money was cash. It could have been deposited anywhere. And I'm still suspicious there weren't slush funds, warehouses kept aside for Obama, for maybe Nancy Pelosi and others, to use as the payoff money. This big payoff money and slush fund money, the Democrats have always tried to get back in their own pockets or use to fund their own causes. Barack Obama was always trying to get even Department of Justice settlement money to go to leftist causes, which was an innovation, I think, that was completely outrageous. Now, the 2 points I want to make in this, basically giving you the background, is where I think North Korea ended peacefully. I'm not equally sure that Iran's going to end peacefully. What I'm seeing today in Netanyahu's comments is that there may have been given a green light in in Israel, to launch an airstrike on Iran's facilities, on their nuclear facilities. After President Trump had the recent missile attack in Syria, Israel began attacking the Syrian airfields that were being in part constructed by Iran. And I think that Netanyahu, within the Knesset, within the government in Israel, has finally been given the permission to attack Iran's nuclear facilities. President Obama actually stopped Netanyahu from attacking Iran's nuclear facilities by threatening to have U.S. planes shoot down Israeli planes if Israel did attack Iran's nuclear facilities. Israel has the right to defend itself. I've been a strong supporter of Israel and remain one. My support is biblically based in large part in that God said that, the return of the Jewish state was going to be a biblical event, which I believe concurred with Harry Truman, occurred in 1948, when Harry Truman allowed the division of Palestine to create the state of Israel. And I also believe that, as God has stated in the Bible, once the Jews were back to Israel and created the new state, they were never going to leave. That was going to be, even in Ezekiel, discussion of what looks like a nuclear war, God intervenes and Israel wins. Now, I also want to make clear I'm not advocating war. If we could get a solution in Iran, like we did in North Korea, the world would celebrate. But in Iran, you're dealing with a much more radical and determined group of the mullahs, the religious leaders, who are determined to bring about this apocalypse and would see nuclear war and welcome it as the beginning of what was needed to make the Mahdi return and to establish Shiite Islam worldwide as the only and leading religion, period. Dominant religion because it's the only religion. The dealing with Iran is going to be more difficult. I'm sure that President Trump, as compared to President Obama, would be understanding and would not stand in the way if Israel does strike Iran. Now, of course, we'll have certain people objecting that Israel has nuclear weapons. Isn't nuclear weapons part of the entire problem with Israel? Well, I'm going to maintain, I have maintained from the beginning, that Israel developed those weapons in a defensive capacity. B. Scott, thank you very much. Ursula Christie, thank you. And intends to use them in a defensive capacity. And Israel, I think, as a small state in the Middle East, has needed that capacity in order to stay free. Basically, I think that the Shiites, the most extreme Shiites in Iran, are trying to force end times. And my belief remains, biblical. And that is, as God basically is saying, once we can deal with these extreme problems, and once we can deal with Iran, once we can get the world past this new world order craziness, back to principles of God and principles of family. I continue to say Jesus Christ is my personal Savior. I say that for an important reason, that these are not only historical analyses, but these are biblical times we're living through. These, I think, have end-day characteristics to them. And I think that if we get down on our knees, we pray, we repent, we get God's assistance, I'm confident we'll have the potential for 1,000 years of peace. We'll have the potential to expose. That's why I'm fighting so hard to expose this new world order, with its pedophilia characteristics, the Satanism. And I'm going to be posting more this week from my two Anonymous, the Satan Scholar Anonymous and the Silicon Valley Anonymous, because I've gotten from both of them in the past few days some remarkably important information. Important information that's going to eliminate not only the arrests that are being made, as we have seen the arrest of this NXIVM, this sex cult. We're beginning to see, I mean, the prosecution of Bill Cosby, as tragic as it was. Harvey Weinstein might be next. But the sex trafficking in children, boys and girls, that the elite are engaging in, not just in Hollywood, Silicon Valley, and the satanic rituals. And I've gotten some chilling material from the Silicon Valley Anonymous. I'm going to be posting this. I'll be posting all of this in my YouTube channel, and that's Jerome.Corsi. I'll be posting it also on Gab. Susan Huber, thank you. And over the next week it's going to be chilling. But what I'm saying is that I continue to refer to the spiritual element of this battle. And I encourage those of you who are out there to realize that if we do stand together, if we do fight this, if we do, go back to the Judeo-Christian tradition and values that our founding fathers gave us, we can win this battle. And we can win this battle not just for ourselves and our children, but historically. That, the fellowship, the working together, the patriots in the second revolution. I think the second revolution, this great awakening, is occurring worldwide, not just in the United States. We don't need to fight each other. We don't need to fight alone. And imploring the assistance of God, I think, is vital. Now, this is the transition I want to make into the Trump counterattack, into what's currently going on domestically. First of all, that correspondence dinner that was in Washington was absolutely a disgrace, and it was shockingly embarrassing to hear that woman who claimed to be a comedian attack Sarah Huckabee Sanders the way she did. The left is fine to shame people. They don't mind being racist, xenophobic, fat shame, accuse people's personality and body types and their heritage. The left feels justified in doing it because their intolerance, they think that they're fighting social injustice. So even if they, kill people in their intolerance, imprison them for thought crimes, the left feels justified. Well, the history of the world has shown that that's extremely dangerous thinking. It leads to totalitarianism. It leads to the kinds of mass murders we've seen in communist regimes. We've got to understand that our founding fathers instituted our Constitution as limited government and the Bill of Rights because they knew the need for civility, to listen to each other, to debate with each other. And that correspondence dinner, I think, did more to discredit the mainstream media than anything else I've seen in my life. It was so shocking. It couldn't be watched. Even the reruns couldn't be watched. It was embarrassing. I don't know how Sarah Huckabee Sanders sat there. I mean, it was tremendous, I think, discipline on her part. And I think that one event is going to change the entire effect of the mainstream media in the public eye. And, in that sense, I think we might derive some benefit from it, but it was shocking in its ugliness, the hatred of the mainstream media for Trump. It was disgusting. And when you find how Donald Trump's reacting now today to questions, the last two press conferences with Macron from France and Merkel from Germany, first of all, there was not a single question asked Donald Trump about Special Prosecutor Mueller or the Russian narrative. I think the mainstream media knows it's over, understands that Mueller's out of gas and done, understand that Mueller has nowhere to go but to quit. Now, when Donald Trump was asked today in the Rose Garden a question about this invasion coming across the border from people claiming asylum, if you notice quickly, Donald Trump didn't even let the full question be asked. I mean, was expressed being tired of it, and he said, our immigration laws are so weak and so easily gamed. He was not going to tolerate a bunch of leftist lawyers coaching people from Honduras and encouraging them to march through Mexico. And if they wanted asylum, why did they take it in Mexico? Mexico offered it. And President Trump cut that question off because he directly said, I'm president, this is what we're going to do. And we're going to change these laws of immigration to protect America. Now, these are the kinds of clues that Donald Trump is giving, that we're moving from a period in which he was hampered by being under question and assault to now where he's moving on the offensive. North Korea is one indication. What's going to unfold in the next few days in Iran is going to be another major set of steps that ultimately, I believe, will lead to peace in the Middle East. A goal Donald Trump believes he can achieve, and so do I. I think Donald Trump can do it. I don't think any other person on the face of the earth could do it, but Donald Trump, who I've known for decades, has my confidence he'll achieve it. And that's remarkable. And the border will be secured. Now, what this means is that I think with Rudy Giuliani in place, Rudy Giuliani is going to take steps which will convince Robert Mueller, in words of one syllable, that Robert Mueller has enough dirt on him, enough background. Robert Mueller's worth $18 million. Comey's worth $11 million. How did these guys get this net worth? Well, what they did was they followed along the New World Order plan spearheaded by the Democrats, Hillary and Barack Obama. So they went in and out of corporate boards. We made millions of dollars, got legal assignments with favorable law firms. James Comey's brother's doing the Clinton Foundation taxes. That must tell you something. Fraudulent as they are, knowing wink wink the IRS would do nothing. As long as the Clinton Foundation was not attacked as what it is, a criminal enterprise, the New World Order crowd, including Soros, knew they had a slush fund. And as long as Mueller understood and Comey that their job was to protect the Clintons, to be Clinton fixers, they would be on the side of being able to dip into that slush fund and benefit from it. So Comey, on the board of HSBC when it's laundering massive amounts of money, drug money, terrorist money, Mueller's head of the FBI. I mean, I detected that, as I pointed out, with John Cruz, who brought me 1,000 pages from the Long Island branches of HSBC, and I found people 80 years old in New York City. Their Social Security numbers were being used to run bogus accounts that the people didn't know existed in their names and Social Security numbers. And HSBC is running millions of dollars through these accounts for a few days and closing the accounts. So there's no paper trail. No accounting needs to be done because they end up with zero balance. And I recognize that as money laundering. You mean Mueller, head of the FBI, and Comey sitting on the board couldn't figure that out? Of course they could. Fact is, you can't run a drug operation or terrorism without laundering the money through a bank. And if the CIA didn't know about it, I'm confident they did. The NSA wasn't tracking it, and I'm confident they did. And the comptroller of the currency, then all these agencies ought to be shut down for being incompetent. It was a great scheme to keep the money laundering going. That should be Exhibit A as to why Mueller should be under criminal investigation. Exhibit B, Uranium One bribery scheme with Russia and the United States. which Mueller suppressed so the Committee on Foreign Investments in the United States wouldn't know about it, and wouldn't block the Uranium One sale to Russia, which Hillary made $147 million in her foundation. Wonder if Mueller got any of that money through corporate assignments or legal assignments, millions of dollars to Mueller for making sure the information on the Russian bribery scandal never surfaced when the Committee on Foreign Investments in the United States was going to take its vote. That's what a good cover-up artist is in place to do. Jennifer Small, thank you very much. Always appreciated. Thank you. And repeated donations noted and really tremendously appreciated, Jennifer. Thank you. This is, I think, a turning point where Giuliani is the guy, New York guy, a prosecutor himself. Come in and tell Mueller's a dirty prosecutor. And here's where I want to transition into General Flynn. Because we know now that these two, Strozik and Page, in their exchanged emails, the two who are inside the Department of Justice, which if you look at my book, Killing the Deep State, I identify as where the coup d'etat started. Strozik, Page, in the FBI, exchanging these emails, saying that they wanted to make sure there was a way to remove Donald Trump from office if he should happen to win. Strozik interviewed General Flynn. And even Comey came out of that interview and said that General Flynn did not lie. We have then Strozik and his superiors, including Andrew McCabe, who's also fired from the FBI, they changed the interrogation report to make it look like Flynn lied. The current judge on that case has now issued an order for Mueller to turn over the Brady material, which means he knows that Mueller, as a dirty prosecutor, was so determined to prosecute Flynn. What Mueller did is he ran Flynn out of money. Patriots did not come forward with enough money for Flynn to defend himself. Flynn sold his house. And Flynn ultimately lied that he said, I'll plead guilty, knowing he had not lied he didn't lie to the Department of Justice. The two things we have, I think, that are also game changers this last week are the two conclusions of the House Intelligence Committee. Number one, that there was no Russian collusion. None. Didn't exist. So this entire more than a year we spent on the Russian collusion has been bogus. And number two, that report validated, the House Intelligence report, that General Flynn did not lie. Okay, now, if Mueller, as a dirty prosecutor, ran Flynn out of money, saying you're going to go to jail for the rest of your life, we're going to, we want you to cooperate with us. We want you to tell us what you know about Donald Trump. We want you to spill your beans on all the others in the campaign and how they were colluding with Russia. And Flynn says, look, I can't do that because it didn't happen, but I'll admit I lied to you. How's that? And said, fine, well, you're guilty now. You go plead guilty. That's dirty. I mean, that's forcing Flynn to admit guilt to something he didn't do. Now, Flynn, I think, had the problem when he came out of the military. He was looking to need money, and he did work on contracts with Turkey. But he didn't fully disclose or make clear that he was a foreign agent, had a contract with Turkey, was getting paid, which he should have done. But that's considered in Washington typically to be a technical violation, especially if Democrats do it. Flynn, instead, was cornered, and even the vice president said, well, Flynn lied. He didn't represent himself truly. I think Flynn didn't lie. Flynn may not have been as forthcoming as he was about his work he was doing for Turkey. I mean, look, when you have a position on the National Security Council, you can't be having a private contract to do work for a country like Turkey or any other country. You have to do that job without any entanglements, obligations that you're owing under contracts you're being paid for by a foreign nation. And Flynn made a mistake not to make that clear to begin with or to take the contract. But Flynn was unexperienced. He had his son running his public relations. Flynn was not experienced in the ways of Washington. What Flynn was experienced in was military intelligence, and for over 30 years he'd been a patriot serving this country in military intelligence with a distinguished career. A man who should never have been forced by mugged like Mueller. And this is what Mueller, Weissman, this whole group of prosecutors that Mueller have gotten. They're all thugs. They're more interested in a conviction, even if they have to break the law to get a conviction. So not turning over the Brady material, the exculpatory material, the fact that Flynn's interrogation report with the FBI was altered to make it look like he lied, that Mueller didn't turn that over is also a crime. And I believe Rudy Giuliani is going to remind Mueller that that could be investigated, especially if the judge throws out the case. Now, I think we're going to see more results. I'm getting impatient for results. Every day that Donald Trump allows the deep state, the 10,000 on this SES deal in the bureaucracy protected by Jimmy Carter's law and his, administrative orders to not be fired. The people in the bureaucracy who have been holdovers from Obama, every day President Trump let this deep state stay in place is another day that, and Mueller, another day that he could be found guilty of something. Another day that a thug raid on a Trump lawyer like Michael Cohen, which I think violated the Fourth Amendment. Michael Cohen had already, hold on a second. It's part of the problem of running this myself, but I apologize for the interruption. But the idea that you have Michael Cohen, everything he had taken by the FBI. He took his file cabinets, they took his electronic files, his computers, his videos. They took everything Michael Cohen had. Michael Cohen had already admitted that he paid the money to this stripper. He already admitted he got reimbursed for it. If Mueller wanted to indict him or charge him with a federal election campaign violation, he didn't need more evidence because Michael Cohen had already given it over. This was a dragnet to get opposition researcher find something that Trump had done wrong in his business career. That's not what a search warrant's supposed to do, and that's why every day that Mueller stays in business, every day the deep state stays in place, every day even a cooperating group like the Strzok Pages are allowed to remain employed in the FBI. Every day that you've got Rob Rosenstein, another deep state operative, leading in a leading position in the Department of Justice, is another day Donald Trump's at risk, and ultimately at risk of assassination. We need more action. We need more things to happen now, not promises or riddles or suggestions that it's going to happen. We need it to happen now. So, for instance, Rudy Giuliani needs to continue these discussions one-on-one with Mueller. Rudy Giuliani said he could, in 2 weeks, have Mueller shut down. Let's have him shut Mueller down. A lot of dirty prosecutors out there, a lot of dirty cops. Where we're going to get this turned around is where Rudy Giuliani and others bring justice, where there's more arrests for this sex trafficking. This one organization of sex slaves, this NIMX that got everyone indicted in it, the leaders in it, including this actress. These need more. I think we need them to be of a compelling nature. It's why I'm going to show you more evidence from the demonic scholars, Satanic Scholar Anonymous, the Silicon Valley Anonymous. I want to show you what the crimes look like and how they're committed, how these sex rings develop. We're going to begin to make it clear that we need more arrests now. And with the information that exists with Strozik and Page, where we know they had this Gmail account that was open source. That was another revelation last week. So that other people could participate in it. That there could be drops even from foreign nations. We need to see those. We need to have this information made public. It's why I got impatient about the JFK files. Why wait 3 more years? President Trump, don't let the deep state or the national security advisors come in and bamboozle you. You don't need to wait. What national security secrets were we protecting 58 years in 2021 after the Kennedy assassination? I mean, are they protecting the Bushes? What's being protected here? And secondly, the American people can handle the truth. Let's see these emails between Strozik and Page and the FBI. Let's begin making this public. Let's make it clear to the American people that the House Intelligence Report is a game changer. No Russian collusion, and General Flynn did not lie. Let's get all this information out, and let's begin the process of going after the Democrats. We support President Trump, and I think the driving force here in all that we're doing, in all of this Second American Revolution, the single unifying driving force has got to be support of President Trump in his effort, as I say, as I put it in the book, killing the deep state. We need to kill this deep state. And it's why we're getting so many people joining us from around the world. Because this is a worldwide awakening. It's a worldwide understanding that we don't need to be ruled anymore by a small group of zealot religious figures like the mullahs in Iran, or a group of absolute greed heads like Soros and his agenda to destroy America, or deep state operatives, whether they be Democratic or Republican. Paul Ryan has now resigned. McConnell looks like his wife, since they've been buying a lot of boats since she's been cargo boats, big boats, major investments since she's been heading the Department of Transportation. Looks like a new scandal brewing. Let's get rid of these deep state people. Donald Trump did not need to be president. He's devoted his life. He's taking the risk, putting his life on the line every day to take this abuse. Rudy Giuliani is a strong force, a good, strong ally, strong supporter. I've known Rudy Giuliani for a long time also, truly supporting Donald Trump. Former prosecutor, he knows, cleaned up New York City. I think he's the exact right person to go and shut down the special counselor's office. And these things, I think, need to be happening now. We need to be putting our trust in what Donald Trump is doing. And I think even Putin and Xi in China, with the force that Donald Trump has shown in North Korea and what's about to unfold in Iran, Pompeo is over there, I think, setting the stage for Iran next. Iran's going to unfold here, I think, very quickly. I believe China and Russia will stand down and will allow the United States to begin to exact justice in Iran as we have in North Korea. And I believe it's going to be successful as well. These are difficult times, but difficult times have been times that have always challenged and brought the best out of patriots worldwide. They brought the best out of Americans. We just went through the month where the shot heard around the world was celebrated from Lexington and Concord. We had when Macron was here, the remembrance of the importance of the French, the American Revolution. We would not have won, I don't necessarily believe, without Lafayette and his assistance to George Washington from the French in the American Revolution. I think we're seeing now that we're beginning to have some light appear on the horizon, and this is going to be a turning of, I believe, the Trump counterattack, this middle game, is about to pick up speed. And we're going to be seeing some developments which are going to encourage everyone around the world. The European leadership, the New World Order, Soros, others are scrambling. Where's Adam Schiff? We haven't seen much of Adam Schiff since we began exploring the Standard Hotel and the goings-on in his West Hollywood district. He seems to have gone quiet. I want to end with one plea here, and this plea is to free Julian Assange. I think that if we study U.S. law, New York Times v. Sullivan, New York Times v. U.S. Pentagon Papers case, journalists can publish even classified material that was stolen, as long as they didn't steal it. Julian Assange published the Democratic National Committee emails and Podesta emails during the campaign. And the Democrats have been livid. They want to say, well, that's the basis, that's the core argument of the Russian collusion, that Trump encouraged the Russians to steal those and hand them over to WikiLeaks. Julian Assange has the information that Seth Rich was the Democratic National Committee employee who was loyal to Bernie Sanders, who was killed in the streets of Washington. That he was the one who took a thumb drive and stole those emails in his anger that Hillary Clinton and Debbie Wasserman Schultz had rigged the Democratic National Committee primaries against Bernie Sanders. And if Julian Assange can bring that information over to the United States and make it clear to the American people with Seth Rich, the entire Russian collusion collapses. And we have excellent analysis and excellent evidence. We have excellent analysis and evidence that, in fact, it was Seth Rich who did this. Julian Assange, I think, also has extensive information about the amount of surveillance the American people are under. We're learning increasingly that Silicon Valley, Facebook, and the others are just CIA-created CIA fronts. Taking our information, we're willingly giving it in. Oh, tell your friends what you're doing. We're the keyboard, Facebook is, for the NSA and for the CIA. This has got to come to an end. And in bringing it to an end, I think what we've got to realize is that Donald Trump has the ability to do the exposing of Silicon Valley, has the ability to bring Julian Assange here with the evidence of General Clapper lying, that millions of Americans are under surveillance, that they have files on all of us. And this deep state control of information's got to stop. Now, I want to end this, first of all, by thanking everybody for participating. We've had an excellent group of nearly 3,000 people watching this. And I think we're beginning to see the New World Order crowd retreat in panic. In the end, and I've said this repeatedly, in the end, God wins. Even when things look difficult, even when we are in most doubt, remember always that God wins. We feel frustrated because we know how much evil there is. We feel frustrated because we think we can't do anything about it. But by supporting Donald Trump, by increasing your knowledge, by getting involved, by praying, we're making a massive difference. And so I encourage all out there to understand that you, the anonymous listening, are the second revolution worldwide. It's going to affect the EU. It's going to affect everybody in every corner of the earth. the tools we've been given, including the internet, reach every corner of the world increasingly. Your job, our job, is to support this and to keep your faith, protect your community, support, speak the truth. Do your best to really understand what's going on and to follow it. In the end, God's going to win. God's going to require our assistance in order to win. So I want to thank everybody for listening today. Tell you, how much this means to me, how important it is. My motivation to make sure that we return the Constitution of the United States to its original meaning and its original foundation, and we extend liberty and freedom throughout the world. So as I usually do, let me conclude by thanking you for joining us today and saying, God bless. Thank you all.